My name is Ray Cool. I want to welcome all of you to today's webinar where we're going to concisely overview the tools involved in a complete defense against attackware, which is a term now being used in place of malware or ransomware because of new strains that have come about that are more dangerous than ever. So thank you for joining. We will be efficient today. We'll be finished before 1 o'clock and or sooner. And we're going to overview a number of things each very quickly. So attackware, what is different about attackware? We'll talk about what are the fundamental layers that are important in a multi-layered security defense. And we're going to do a short demonstration of each of the components and a bit of information about security awareness training and risk assessments. So thanks again for joining. So some of you have been clients and friends of PBSI for many, many years. Thank you very much. For some of you, this is your first exposure to PBSI. Our goal today is to inform and educate, not to sell products and services. So for those of you unfamiliar with PBSI, we have hundreds of clients in healthcare and outside of healthcare in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And the most important thing to know is we've built a lot of experience over a period of time in security and in IT services. 22 among our staff have been with us for 10 years or more. So we have a lot of really, really good people, which as CEO of the organization, it's a blessing to be able to say that I know that effective knowledge helps clients succeed. So thanks for joining. So those of you in attendance, you are the quote, smart ones. You already know the reason you're attending is because the internet's a dangerous place. We need help and information, all of us together in trying to understand how to protect against the new and dangerous environment which we face. So you know the internet's a dangerous place. So increasingly, something that's been very material in healthcare and outside of healthcare is hackers have learned to dollarize stolen data. You'll see a bit more about that. New and evolving phishing and keylogging attacks are really changing things, including the most recent strain, which brought down hospitals and organizations all over the world that used a new form of attackware, which instead of ransomware that requests ransom, instead damages files immediately so that they are unrecoverable. So regardless of whether you pay a ransom or not, you will not receive reconstructed files. They're damaged permanently. So this is just one article that we have linked to that indicates 1 million decrypted Gmail and Yahoo passwords are available for sale. There are hundreds and hundreds of data breaches. Some of the most recent ones have compromised tens of millions of email addresses and passwords. So one of the things we're going to demonstrate is the way that you can know whether your information has been compromised. So this is a dark web search that we'll show you quickly, but the starting point here is to understand what are the components of security. And in each case, there are cost-effective and available tools to secure. You do not need to spend a lot of money to be effectively secured. You simply need to make sure the right tools are in place. So the starting point of that is to have a firewall that is set up correctly. Again, it's very inexpensive to set up a firewall correctly, quote correctly, which includes having it be set to silent so it doesn't return information to those who would send out pings to learn things about what is contained in your network, and to redirect ports. These are things that are technical terms, but they're real easy to accomplish. And the starting point of security is making sure that you're effectively blocked from the outside world, and that you have on the exterior at your firewall antivirus and intrusion prevention going on. Again, simple software that's in place. Many firewalls today have these features, but they need to be set up so you can block a lot of hacking attempts before they enter. And then another thing with particularly newer firewalls, the technology involved in SSL packet inspection, which is a technical term, forgive the geek speak for a moment, but the information that new firewalls within the last couple of years, a lot of technology improvements have been made that allow a firewall to understand the contents of a packet and much more effectively understand whether this could be dangerous malware, which includes attachments and links that get evaluated at the firewall level. So simply having the right exterior protection, step one. Interior protection, having your wireless set up securely with effective and highest level encryption methods. Again, very simple to do. Most of us today understand our wireless networks need to be password protected with significant passwords, and that we need to have internal network controls in place to ensure effective use internally. So we're not giving away our passwords among our staff and so forth. So internal control includes making sure staff are trained, that our physical security, whether it's cameras or access controls or visitor logging, that we have effective controls physically within the building. So exterior, interior. The most important and most oft addressed area is endpoint security, meaning the desktop, where the action tends to be in terms of viruses and malware, and making sure desktops are set correctly with always up-to-date antivirus and always up-to-date patch management for other software. So this is an area where, again, very inexpensive to do, but it must be set up correctly. And if it's not, Katie, bar the door, because software that's not up to date opens the door for the most dangerous security issues that are related to unupdated software patches. So this has been oft repeated, and hopefully for those of you in attendance today, this is not a new concept, but if you would like any clarity on patch management, this is something that online monitoring that PBSI provides and others provide are typically a routine part of it to make sure that you don't just set things up correctly, but in fact those patches are being updated in nearly real-time basis. So the tools available that we're going to focus on today involve how can you see from afar, and sometimes within an organization it's very difficult. Someone sitting at their PC can't really see the things going on at their PC that can be seen with remote monitoring tools. So having an active online monitoring taking place, having a tool that you can know what hackable data can be found on your network, making sure that you have backup in place that is encrypted and protected against ransomware. So these are some of the very key things. We'll do short demonstrations of these. And then staff training. Enough can't be said about training. The fact is, all the tools we put in place, exterior, interior, monitoring, most security failures come because of staff who make a click on the wrong thing. Website, attachment, link in an email, training is an increasingly important. And we'll talk about some ideas to make sure training is done effectively. So those are the key topics. We're going to delve into each of them in a bit of detail. So the first thing we're going to do is do a short demonstration of a password exposure check. So this is kind of a frightening thing, but I'm going to actually go to the dark web. So the dark web is not available to those of us, and we don't want to go there. I've never been on the dark web directly. None of us ever want to go there. You need a Tor browser. You need to have real intent to go to the biggest section of the internet, which is underneath the surface. You can't get there with Google. You can't get there with traditional means. But I'm going to click a link now and demonstrate something. This is a tool where PBSI has signed up for this tool, and I'm going to log in, and I'm going to do a search on the dark web. So where I'm searching is on a database underneath the surface. So as a security company, we pay another security company who's created this tool for access to be able to do a search like this. We can search for individual email addresses, or I can do a domain search, which I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to search for pbsinet.com, which is our domain. And what it went out and found on the dark web is all of the compromised passwords of PBSI employees that have been revealed within the last year. And you can see it's a fairly long list. And here is the email address of the person, and here's the password that was compromised. So I wouldn't be displaying any of this for anyone other than PBSI. I'm willing to display our own passwords, and every person on this list has already long ago been notified and their password changed, so these are not valid passwords, but sure enough, these were real passwords. We signed up for this dark web search tool when I saw my own name displayed with the password I used to use as my normal password. I thought, oh my goodness, how in the world? I'm really security conscious. How did that happen? So with virtually every domain, so if you have an @myorganizationname.com domain, chances are I could do a search and display all the email addresses that have been compromised. So it's possible that one or more of these were compromised because somebody was fooled into clicking a wrong link. But the fact is, most of our passwords get exposed by somebody else's security flaw. and there are hundreds of them. Amazon, Target, countless numbers. The Republican National Committee was subject, one of their vendors exposed 200 million email addresses, information about voters that, pardon me, in that case it wasn't email addresses, but names and addresses and phone numbers. Just so many compromises that we give our password to Target or to any shopping site. And once we've done that and they get hacked, which happens all the time, then our passwords are sent out there. So one of the things that we take away from this, knowing that passwords are regularly exposed and there's almost nothing you can do, is we have some guidelines. So what do we do knowing that passwords can be exposed? First of all, make sure everyone knows, change your passwords. Change normal passwords in particular, and don't use normal passwords. Another thing is, don't reuse work passwords with personal sites. Make sure whatever passwords you use with work-related accounts are always different. So if somebody makes a mistake on target.com and that gets stolen, that they haven't compromised the HIPAA compliance of the employer. So another important idea is use a password manager. So there are some free password managers. I use a product called Dashlane. It's $39 a year, and it encrypts passwords and makes sure and creates an encrypted tunnel no matter where I'm logged in. So the reason is you've logged in the past to Adobe, DocuSign, LinkedIn, Tumblr, MySpace, Yahoo. They've all been hacked. Passwords have been compromised. And you need to make sure that when you set up a password, that it is kept secure to the greatest extent possible. So another key, enable two-factor authentication for online financial accounts. So this is where you log in, you put in your password, and you get a display on your iPhone or your Android of a security code that then you have to enter in order to log in more or less real time. And it works very well. It's a hassle, but highly recommended. Most financial sites now, most credit card sites permit two-factor authentication, recommend that you use it. Another key is don't use public Wi-Fi. So you see something called Google Starbucks or Trump Wi-Fi. Those are not real. There is no such. Now, Starbucks has a free Wi-Fi, but it won't have a name that would be confusing. And the fact is, if you're on a public Wi-Fi, everything you do can be seen by your next door neighbor. With a free download tool, they can see exactly what you're typing on your screen. They know what password you're entering in. Do not use public Wi-Fi to log into any site that requires a password. Cellular is protected. So you can use your cellular. If you're not using the Wi-Fi at Starbucks, but you're using your cellular phone, not connected to Wi-Fi, you can actually log in, and that is secure. So if you want to find out if you have passwords have been compromised, either your personal passwords or with your organization, contact us. We can do these searches quite easily. So first thing to understand is lots of passwords have been compromised. Don't put your head under a cloud. Make sure all staff know if you've used passwords for a while, and particularly if you reuse passwords, change them. They are not safe, regardless of what security practices you followed. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate another key component that's really two separate things. I'm going to show a simple, cost-effective online monitoring tool where PBSI can do this for clients. Other vendors can provide this same kind of service, but what you want is you've put your security tools in place. You want some way to know whether the security is working effectively, where you don't have to depend on an employee at a desktop saying, gee, I got this funny message that says I'm supposed to pay a ransom notice. That would be the wrong time to learn that you've been compromised. Somebody on the outside will see that kind of thing virtually real time before it affects something in your network. So monitoring, and then I'm going to also demonstrate this subcomponent called data breach risk intelligence. So I'm going to go to this online monitoring tool now that we use at PBSI, and I'm going to look just at devices at PBSI. So the dashboard you're seeing, I'm not trying to make anyone into a technician here. In fact, I'm not a technician, but what this dashboard is showing on the left-hand side is a list of PBSI clients. So I can scroll through clients, and if I want to pick a particular client, I can do that. I've picked, in fact, in this case, PBSI. So the only devices that show up are those at PBSI. So over here on the right-hand side, there's a top section and a bottom section. I'm going to call this the north panel and the south panel. So on the north panel are all the devices that we see. So in this case, I'm looking at either servers, workstations, mobile devices, or other services or other network devices. So servers, which is the starting place for most important critical things, these are the servers at PBSI. I can scroll up and down. When I click on a particular server in the north panel, then the things that are being monitored about that server display in the south panel. So the whole concept of online monitoring relies on a checklist system where basically we think green, yellow, red. And the only things that show up proactively are those that are red or yellow. The things that are green, meaning everything's okay, we really don't want to see. So in this case, I'm going to look inside of something that shows green just because I want to demonstrate the thing. So when I pick on this server, first of all, we can see that our Sonic wall is connected to this particular site, so I can click and get the detail of bandwidth issues. So knowing whether my bandwidth is being used heavily, and I can always go and look at history. So the value of what I'm showing you now is simply that if something shows up yellow or red, and a technician is alerted, what's going on with the bandwidth at this particular customer, they can drill in and get reports for the last 24 hours for various things that are monitored, and over on the right-hand side for the last 8 days. So we can see if this pattern that's being seen right now is repetitive or one-time. So if we see something like this, a spike, this might have been an online backup or a large file download. So it's simply diagnostic information that allows a technician to drill into detail. So we can see bandwidth. The things we're looking for primarily are security issues, performance issues, physical issues, and there are lots of each of these. So failed login checks, that's a security issue. If we see 1 or 2 or 3 failed logins that somebody tried to key their password in and did it incorrectly, we see 2,000 or 4,000 or more, then something's going on. There's an attack attempt in process. So here's something where we might look at performance. There's memory that's overutilized on the server. I could click in and find more details about that. Physical disk health. I'm going to look at these various SNMP checks, which, again, I don't want to belabor this, but what is going on here is that there are checks not just on servers, but on other network devices. So here are UPS checks where battery does not need replacing, battery is normal, it's online. You don't want to have to hear your UPS going beep, 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 and then all of a sudden failing and your network going down in order to know that your UPS battery needs attention. It can be monitored online and proactively checked. Switches, routers, firewalls, in this case, the status is okay, but we're monitoring fans, port locks, temperature issues. A port lock would be a security issue where, again, without trying to make everybody into technicians, a port lock could be a physical problem, or it could be that there's a PC connected to that port where all of a sudden there's a lot of unexpected traffic, and that port gets locked by the switch manufacturer, and that gets reported. So sometimes a port lock reported right now is the first alert to a possible ransomware attack on a PC. Whether toner cartridge is up to date, whether the website is active, so many things can be checked with online monitoring. So we can do that with servers, we can do that with PCs. And again, I won't belabor this, but I want to pick, see, these are all the PCs at PBSI, and a couple of these have red indicators. So these would have been already highlighted to the dashboard. So somebody monitoring this dashboard without having selected individual accounts, the most important items will always come to the surface real time. So if a server goes down in Northern Kentucky, our dashboard is alerted right now, because each device, server, PC, network switch, has a monitoring agent that reports in either every 15 minutes or every 5 minutes or every hour, depending on how that device is set up, and it reports in on the status of a host of these things down here. So here's a PC where I can see on that particular PC that it was last rebooted an hour ago. This one was last rebooted 7 days ago. And we know that the last response time will always be within the last 15 minutes for each of these, and it will be highlighted if something isn't. So that PC was turned off. So anyway, status of antivirus, failed logins, security things, status of patches. So here is a PC where there are a couple of patches missing. This is something where we have patches updated either daily or 3 times a week, and a technician can look at this. I'm playing the role of a technician right now and see that on that PC there were a couple of missing patches and they can be updated right now. That would have happened automatically had I not gone to look at it, but the dashboard manager has the ability to see these things. So I'm going to move on from here so you can see the basic monitoring that's taking place allows somebody to see in real time on your behalf if there are security or performance issues on a PC. So I just searched for my name, Ray. And so what it found are all the PCs at PBSI where Ray is part of the name. And I'm going to click on my desktop. So this click here, I've selected on the dashboard the very PC at which I'm sitting as I'm speaking to you. So the dashboard manager can see these things about Ray's PC that I can't see sitting at my PC unless I'm connecting to the dashboard. So whether I have enough free space on my C drive and whether there have been login attempts, whether there are any patch issues. So there were a couple of failed patches, which I left here so this would be alerted to the dashboard manager and they would say, reprocess those. Sometimes we don't know why a patch doesn't load. It's just the way things work in the PC world. So having somebody looking on your behalf and making sure that these things are always updated, it's useful. I can see the virus status on a particular PC and the history. I can see all the checks that are done. So a dashboard manager has access to lots of things about a PC. I'm going to move on from here and demonstrate another separate feature. So a subcomponent of online monitoring that we highly recommend for organizations where you house secure information. So medical offices, you have patient PHI and EPHI, other organizations, you have credit card information, social security numbers of employees, human resource information. So that information can exist on your network, and if it's stored in an encrypted database, it's fine, it's secure. A hacker can't get to it and damage it. But so many times we have devices on our network where we really do not know what's stored on the C drive of our office manager or our human resources person or my own PC. And so what I'm going to demonstrate now is a security scan that we have running at PBSI on all of our PCs and servers every night. It's very cost effective to have this done one time or done more than one time. And so what I'm going to show you now is what the contents were of the PCI scan and the data breach scan that was run on my PC last night. So I'm going to look under the surface. And of course, again, there's a high-level report that would indicate if something new showed up on Ray's PC, that would be reported to the dashboard manager. But in my case, I'm looking specifically at my PC, and it found last night $1,407 worth of unprotected data. So what is unprotected data? It means it's unencrypted. So it found examples of what it sees as social security numbers and dates of birth. So where did $1,407 come from? There's an algorithm I mentioned earlier that hackers have learned to dollarize data. So if you go to the dark web, which I'm not advocating you do, and you find out how much would it cost me to purchase 100,000 names and addresses with email addresses, if those email addresses have a password with them, they're worth more. If they have a date of birth, they're worth more. If they have a social security number, worth even more. So the combination of data that's available connected with an individual identifies the projected value. So the point of this data breach scan is it finds out in advance before a hacker gets to me what's the value of the data that's unprotected, meaning unencrypted, on each PC on each server on the network. So now I want to find out, well, what does it mean it found $1,407? So the dashboard manager can come down and say, well, it found two files on Ray's PC, and one it found in Ray's documents folder, and the file name is a sample file with dummy SS numbers. And sure enough, there is a file that I put there. They aren't real social security numbers, but they're formatted like they look like. And so as far as the scan is concerned, these are real social security numbers, which I leave there for demonstration. Then it also found another file. This one's on my OneDrive, so it's on my cloud drive, and it's a document that is actually out there that has the date of birth of my son and my granddaughter. So, and it found it in a PDF file. So that's typically thought of as an image, not a data file. So this scan finds things that are very well hidden. So when we first ran this scan on various PCs at PBSI, it found things in recycle bins, in Outlook archived files from 3 years ago, Outlook archived sent mail folders or deleted mail folders from a former employee whose files are still there on a PC. So The point of this data breach scan is it finds data that you would never know and couldn't find manually. You could do all the Windows Explorer searching on your PC you want to. It won't find in your Outlook or your, you could know to look in your deleted mail folder or your recycle bin, but this happens automatically. So it's a simple tool that can be run one time or ongoing that identifies what data that has hackable value sits on your network so that you can protect it, either delete it or encrypt it before you ever get a ransomware attack. Show that kind of information that I just showed you to an auditor, whether a HIPAA auditor or a PCI auditor. Show them that you're doing that kind of risk intelligence tracking and data cleanup in advance, and they already know you're so far ahead of the game that you've certainly passed the due diligence test where you're paying attention at an adequate level. So you can find for healthcare, HIPAA, PCI compliance, very inexpensive. So this kind of a tool, highly recommended. Okay, online backup with ransomware protection. So there are many forms of backup and variations on this. So the backup that we use at PBSI has ransomware protection. So I'm going to define what do I mean by that. When ransomware gets to a PC, they don't all behave the same way, but typically the routine is this. You get infected, typically through a click on the wrong kind of a link, and then it goes to try and encrypt files on your hard drive, those that seem to be of value. And it may also copy them and steal them, but it encrypts them so you can't use them. But then the dangerous thing, it also goes almost always to every connected drive it can find. So if you have a shared drive, a D drive or an E drive or an F drive on your network, it tries to go there and encrypt all of those files. So an encryption, a ransomware event on one PC can immediately turn into, within less than a minute, a high-level problem for the entire organization. So once those files have been encrypted, then you get a ransom notice that says, okay, pay some money and we'll give you your files back. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. In this latest attackware, the ransomware notice was delivered, but the files had already been permanently damaged and the keys thrown away. And no matter whether you paid the ransom, those files are never going to be returned and restored because they're permanently disabled. So how do you defeat that? One of the things is you make sure that all of your backups are encrypted. So, and then redundant and then disconnected. Those are the basic principles. So some of you have encrypted backup now. So you have a removable cartridge or tape or whatever it is. And when the backup takes place from your server, then that data file is encrypted. So it's still connected. You still have a cartridge in your removable drive possibly. And so that encryption is a big step. If you have backup that is not encrypted, then ransomware can get to that and damage that. So you thought you had a backup, all of a sudden, no, you don't. Redundant. So redundant means, so the online backup that we use first backs up to a removable hard drive, typically, and encrypts that, and then it backs up to the internet from there. So online backup is redundant. So what happens is that once the backup to the removable drive takes place, then the server is disconnected from the data and the backup is done from that removable drive to the online repository. So I'm going to do a short demonstration of what this looks like. So online backup. We can see for the particular server or PC that I'm looking at here, I can see the last 30 days of backup. So it keeps each of the last 30 days. And if I hover over a day, I can see that on this day, backup was completed for 55.2 gigabytes. It took 41 minutes. I hover on a different day, and I have a different amount of data and a different amount of time elapsed. It really depends on exactly what changed that day as to what's the value. But then I can go to each of these days, drill into them, and I can restore a specific component. So you have disconnected backups from your removable hard drive on your system, and then also you have redundancy for 30 days back or the last 3 changes, whichever is greater. So if you have Word documents that get changed once every 3 months, then you have 9 months worth, or if they rarely get changed, then you have the last 3 backups whenever that file was last changed. So Online backup that is ransomware protected means the local copy is encrypted and that you have a disconnected online version that is redundant. So the backup we use is not the only component, but many of the backup tools that are used today, they're inexpensive, but they simply don't have this kind of protection. And so why do you have a backup? So that you have foolproof protection. Okay, so I'm going to move on. We've looked at some network tools. We've looked at monitoring. We've looked at data breach testing. We've looked at email password scanning. And we've looked at online backup. So what's the final component? For most of us, it's training. And actually, it's not the final, it's the first. First thing we do, if you were to tell me you don't have a firewall and your employees aren't trained about security practices, I'd say let's train the employees and then put the firewall in place. Maybe not, because they're both so important. But initial training means making sure not just that everybody has your handbook or your policies and procedures, but they've actually been trained. They've been through a organized, it could be in person, your HR person can do it, you can have somebody from the outside like PBSI do it, or you can use some training tools. So we subscribe to and use a set of tools from a company called KnowBe4. It's really effective content, constantly updated, and it's cost effective. So we can set up initial training, then baseline testing, then ongoing training using a variety of media. And again, this is inexpensive. For $3 a month per employee, you can have online training, which includes periodic phishing emails to try and fool employees into clicking the wrong thing. And when they click on the wrong thing, they get exposed to security tips or training videos. So you can train by email, you can phish by email, you can test by email. So most of these videos are very short, and they stop and they prompt you for answers, and you pass, fail, and then the KnowBe4 content, the dashboard, tracks each employee, so we know which employees have been clickers, which employees have finished their training, which ones have done training that's in process. And so then you have certificates of each employee who's completed training. So again, for documentation for auditors and for actual confirmation that you don't just have a, quote, policy in place to train, but you actually have done the training and that each of your employees has been through the training. It is inexpensive to do and well worth it. And the fact that there is ongoing, constantly updated content with this material is really important. So the reason we signed up with KnowBe4 is their content creation and focus on the issue is laser focused and really excellent. And so we started using it at PBSI, and we provide it to other clients as well. So you want to do this irregularly. If everybody knows that every Monday they're going to get a phishing email, you're not really going to produce the results you're looking for. So set up your network with the right protection, monitor it to make sure it's being protected adequately, train your employees, and monitor the training of your employees. So we're almost finished with content, and I'm going to just really quickly go through some of the security principles that we want to make sure employees are trained on. No unapproved downloads, no web links, secure my workspace, which frankly we set up automatically for clients typically where the end user has no control over whether they have their patches updated automatically. That's out of their control, but it is in their control that they visit only work-related sites, that they make sure when they use Microsoft Office that protected view is enabled, and we set this as a default. And if you don't know what that is, it means that when you open up a document, there's another click if it came from outside of your internal network required in order to open the document. It's a safety thing so that if they do happen to open up attachment on an email, they get a second chance before encryption and disaster takes place. If my PC is running slowly, ask for a review. Typically, that means malware is running more so than my PC is just old. And then some employee policies about passwords and written passwords and treating external practice or company specific information as protected and making sure it's not included in emails. And there are specific prohibitions, particularly in healthcare. You may not include patient information in an email. So then email safety, we have a whole free webinar just on this topic where we train folks to really understand solicited versus unsolicited email. It's really important. Unsolicited meaning even if it's from somebody you know, your daughter, your son, your boss, your employee, if it's unsolicited, pay attention to it in a different way. So you request information from somebody and they reply to you, that's solicited. Rarely will that be a problem. But if Ray sends you an email and you trust Ray, still know this is unsolicited and pay attention with a different level of detail. And the things to look, hover over the sender's name, hover over links. Does anything seem amiss? Misspellings, grammar mistakes, colors, formatting, font variations. There are telltale signs that are frequently a really good source to make our ears be alert, to say, wait a minute, there's something that doesn't feel right, stop. And that's the key, is stop. Don't click on anything if there's anything out of sorts. Interestingly, the WannaCry ransom attack that happened 2 or 3 months ago now that affected 50 million PCs worldwide, or 2 million, I forget the number. Anyway, that attack was sent worldwide, and there was a ransomware notice delivered in 23 different languages. Of those languages, only one was grammatically perfect, and that was in Russian. And they don't even think the email came from a Russian source, but it's an indication that getting grammar correct is, or incorrect is a pretty good way to say, wait a minute, this might not be from the person who I think it is. So there are all kinds of recent spoofs. I'm not going to go into this training in detail now, but just know that there are principles that are easy to train, they're straightforward, and it's just important that they do be trained. Can't tell you how many clients, and at PBSI, the same thing happens internally. You ask me or our security administrator what our policy is about X, Y, or Z, and we'll give you the great answer, and then we go to the office manager and we find, well, they didn't really understand that same thing. I thought we had trained that. So the point is, train, test. So a final thing, just to mention that doing a security risk assessment is, we help practices and organizations do this all the time, where we take an inventory of people who's been trained in not, what are our processes, what are our security policies, business associate agreements, training curriculum, what do all these things look like, what improvements are needed, what policies might we want to document that aren't documented. So inventorying people, processes, and then technology. So we're paying attention to, do we have a policy for encrypting all of our portable devices? What are our wireless security controls and firewall rules that are set up? What remote access controls do we have in place? And there's just a number of things that we know how to help evaluate and we can document. So here are the missing ingredients that need additional documentation or training. Which ones are highest priority, and take a list from there. So doing a security risk assessment, for many in healthcare, this is a well understood thing, but frankly, we find so many practices have done a risk assessment, but really what they've done is they've asked their IT vendor, what should I answer this? And they've answered some questions, and a HIPAA auditor who sat with them in person and said, so what do you mean by this? And what do you mean by this? And what does this really mean? That it would become quickly apparent that these were boxes that were checked and not actual representations of policies and controls that are really in place. And you really don't want that surprise from an auditor. So one of the things that we can help with as well is finding where all unprotected information is stored, personally identifiable or protected health information. So taking an inventory, we have free tools and assistance that we can help folks walk through these processes of doing a risk assessment and then helping understand what needs to be documented and what do you do, what steps do you take place to actually create a culture of compliance, not just check some boxes. So I've run through a number of keys, but the purpose of today's webinar was and is to overview the basic components of security. So having multi-layer security in place includes having your network protected from the exterior, having the right controls in place on your PCs, having a process of monitoring and understanding where your security may be amiss, having a training program in place, and being able to document that all of that's done and where your holes are, and having an ongoing action plan to make sure that your security is something that's attended to and it improves and improves, as opposed to once a year, check it out and fill out a piece of paper that sits in a drawer. So I want to thank you for your attendance. We are finished today, and you are welcome to log off if you wish. If you have information that you'd like, you will get a questionnaire, a very short set of questions at the conclusion when you log out. You're welcome to request feedback if you wish, and if you have questions, you're welcome to answer them. We're happy to help with any of these areas, and so feel free to reach out. But today's goal is to provide some free information that hopefully helps you, and I thank you for your attendance.